Go live. Okay, what's going on, people? Welcome back to another week on the Conscious Approach channel. My name is JV Wins. That is Dogon SS, here to talk about another week's worth of interesting topics in culture and society. Appreciate you for tuning in. Appreciate you for supporting logical content. As I always like to say before we kick the video off, if you appreciate the content on this channel, if you like this video, if you like the commentary, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, hit that like button. We certainly appreciate it. Share this video wherever you're watching this video. Share it, like it. Comment because we do pay attention to comments. We comment back, all of that good stuff. So as always, man, I always like to say thank you for your support as we continue to grow the community. And please subscribe and hit that like button. Now, with all of those pleasantries out of the way, we're going to go ahead and get started. Topic number one for this week involves Yung Joc. So Yung Joc, he does Love and Hip Hop, I believe, Atlanta. He formerly Yung Joc of his Going Down fame during the mid 2000s. That was his huge hit, kind of sent him out. And now he's sort of a TV personality. He does Love and Hip Hop Atlanta, which features various aspects of his personal life, including his wife and his family and all of that good stuff. So they together, him and his wife, appeared on a video series, a podcast, and there was an interesting part in which Yung Joc had to sort of get on his wife for what he thought were comments that put him in a negative light with respect to the way that they raise their children. And so we thought that this was interesting because it could provide perhaps some societal commentary on what it means to be a principal guy or what it means to, be an involved parent or however you want to take it. But even within the context of relationships and how, spouses interact and communicate with one another, this was interesting content. So we thought that we would bring it up to talk about it. So we're going to go ahead and share this clip real quick. Please excuse us if there is any audio echo from this clip. As we do with every video on this channel, the links to all of these will be in the description of this video. So you can, of course, click the link to watch the full video uninterrupted by compromised audio while we continue to work some of these clips out. So public service announcement in the event that that does apply in this particular situation. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and play it. We'll talk about it on the back end and we'll give our thoughts on what we thought about it.
Yung Joc wasn't having it.
Well, you say that.
The children are not the issue.
Don't just make it seem like I'm a bad person. Don't make some
I'm
fucked up
saying.
individual. What you're not gonna do is do that.
I didn't say that.
Well, that's how you put it. You said you wouldn't want my son to be like me.
I wouldn't want them to do some of the things that you
Okay,
have done.
and I wouldn't want my daughters to do some of the things you've done. We're human. That's what I'm trying to say.
To do majority of the things that I've done.
Listen, what I'm saying is, when you talk about me, don't sum me up.
Facts, right?
Don't sum me up on the worst side of me or what you consider the worst side of me. Because ain't nobody fucking perfect. So don't do that. That's what we're not gonna do. Because as a man, guess what? I got to stand on mine too.
Because
guess what? Let me say something. I didn't go to college. Guess what? I want my kids to go to college. So we can say that right now. I don't want them to go that direction. I want them to go to college. I can say that with you too.
Right.
But don't sit here in front of the world, in front of a medium, and say, "Oh, I wouldn't want my son or your sons to be like you." Hold on. No, we got you gonna put some respect on my name. Because at the end of the day, I'm successful. I take care of my kids.
Okay.
Ain't none of my kids out here in dire need of love and support. So we're gonna do that. Okay? Because I don't appreciate that. Because there's some things about you that I could say I wouldn't want my daughters to do.
Go ahead.
I'm not gonna do that. I respect you and I love you enough.
I want this magazine to know
no. I
what
respect
it is
the
about
integrity.
Me. You don't want your daughters.
I'm not gonna do that.
Like,
I'm not gonna do that.
Be my guest.
I'm not
gonna be slighted, honey.
I'm not gonna do that. That's where we have to draw the line.
Okay.
Because I don't care because the camera in front of me or somebody asking me questions. I'm not gonna reveal my everything that go on with me. Just like right now, you ain't gonna sit here in front of these people and tell what your credit score is. You ain't gonna sit here and tell them your social security number. You ain't gonna sit here and tell them what's in your bank account either.
I won't.
Okay, so some things are better left fucking unsaid and in the private, and that's what I'm gonna do. So when you addressing me, don't ever make it seem like I'm the worst of the worst. Because I'm not.
Okay.
Because I came through and changed your life. And it wasn't about me having no money. It was about the integrity. It was about my integrity. It was about me standing up for you. It was about me helping you open your eyes to see things that no other man has gotten you to do. So when you talk about me and address me, please be mindful of that. Because I love you for who you are. Good and bad.
You know I love you for who you are.
But I would never say to the world that I wouldn't want my daughters to be like you. Because then it makes me question, why are you with me?
I'm not with you for the bad things. I'm not with you for having outside
children. But just don't ever say that again, please.
Okay, well, you asked me.
You got it in this interview. Don't let me hear you say that again.
Okay.
Ever, please. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I appreciate
you can
that.
Carry on.
All right, Joc.
Yeah, you can carry on. Loving somebody for who they are. That's such a novel concept. So yeah, I thought that was some pretty good stuff from Yung Joc. I can't say that that's something that I expected to hear from him, but maybe that's because I have expectations at this point for, hip hop people. But it's also nice to be pleasantly surprised. So, did you have any initial takes on that video clip, that exchange between the two of them?
Yeah, I was now disclaimer, I don't have any kids, but I was proud to hear him defend himself. And I think that dialogue needed to be had for the mothers out there, whether they're single mothers or they're in a involved situation with the father of the kids, that there's etiquette on how to speak on the father around the children. And so I haven't seen a discussion like that, especially on one of these shows that now I don't know exactly where this clip comes from, or I don't know if it's some type of counseling show or what have you, but
she mentioned that it was a magazine, so it must be some kind of podcast or YouTube component of a magazine. I'll look that up and add more details in the description of the video.
Yeah, and I just appreciate that, because there's going to be a lot of eyes that eventually see this, and the women that have an open mind and try to hear what Joc was actually trying to say there, hopefully they can lend an ear to that and practice some of those things when they are speaking to their children about their father. And because too often, when the father's not around, the mother may have some choice words about the father, things that should only be said in the locker room. So the kids don't need to hear that. You can discuss those things with your homegirls or whoever, people at work. If you have some frustrations or something not positive to say about the father. But when the kids are around, the kids are taking notes. And if there's moments where you're throwing him under the bus, for anything, honestly, you don't know what kind of impact that's going to have on the child. So even if the father is there and they're being present and they're doing their best, but they have shortcomings like any other human, once that child sees the father's inevitable shortcomings, there's no telling how that child is going to internalize that and therefore go a different direction of how the father is trying to dictate things. So initial thoughts on that. How about you, sir? How do you feel about Yung Joc's soliloquy there?
Yeah, I think most people are going to watch that, and I think unfortunately it's going to turn into a commentary on how a man's supposed to handle his woman. I think that's the message that a lot of people are going to take from, well, let me take that back. I think that that's the message that a lot of men will take from watching that is, it'll be, that's how you handle, or that's how you check your girl to keep her in line. And, conversely, I think a lot of women will watch that clip and become defensive. regardless of the merit of what Joc had to say, they might become defensive because of the contentious tone in the clip. But if you strip all of that down and you just kind of look at it from a more overarching perspective, I agree with what you said, and I'll even add more to it. I think that this can serve as an example of the value of two parents being involved with the raising of their children. Even when the parents have disagreements or there are certain aspects, because no situation is perfect, right? So I would imagine, I've never been married before, but I would imagine that no marriage is perfect. There are certain things about your husband or wife that you don't like. But regardless of that other person's shortcomings, when there are children involved, it's very important for you to present a unified front so that the children aren't being tainted with negative perceptions or outlooks on either parent, whether it's the mother or the father. So I think that it's cool to see Joc explain that in a roundabout way with the way that he kind of went at his spouse. Not because I think that I don't want to come at it from that perspective either, where I'm kind of happy because this was a woman who got checked. But I do think that in light of him checking her, it displayed the manner in which we can all understand the importance of parents presenting a unified front for their kids. Furthermore, Black parents as well, because even though it's 2022, we still deal with this issue of single parent households and broken households and fatherless children and all of that good stuff. And so the value of unified fronts in a dual parent household with kids is represented with this kind of clip, which I thought was pretty cool. I appreciate that. Another thing that I thought was interesting was, I have my issues and my feelings and my attitude when it comes to the hip hop environment, the hip hop ecosystem. Just that the whole environment around what is hip hop culture these days. I have my misgivings with it. I'm not gonna go down a laundry list. There's plenty of videos that we've published on this channel where we talk about that kind of stuff. And one of the issues that I have with it is my belief that it seems to be more and more apparent to me that survival in that ecosystem depends on you, particularly from a male's perspective, being devoid of principles. It seems as though the less principles you have, the less principled you are, and the less ethical you are as a human being, the better your career, the longer your career, the more you're able to sustain a lasting presence within that space. And so it's refreshing to see a person who has been in that space for as long as he's been, albeit not as relevant as he initially was, appearing to be a principled human being. I think that's the one thing that I took away from it the most. And I don't know whether there is a direct correlation between him falling back from being an actual artist and him sort of migrating over to the reality television space.
Mm-hmm.
Or whether he's always been that principle to begin with. But it stands to reason that maybe one of the reasons why he fell back from making music is because there might be a conflict of interest when you're trying to survive in that game as long as you can and be principled simultaneously. So perhaps him falling back from being an artist actively and being more of a TV personality is symbolic of him as a principled individual and the compromises that he had to make therein.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, maybe I could be reading too much into it. Probably those are just my sensibilities speaking for myself. Obviously, I don't know Yung Joc, but that's kind of what I read into the place that type of sentiment came from him. And moreover, I just always appreciate modern men who appear to live a principled existence. And so that was the second main takeaway that I took from it, in addition to the importance of, people who are involved in their kids' life presenting a unified front. Because you don't want, he's a more mature individual from what I can tell, and he doesn't care, seemingly, at least from this, about whether much of his personal dirty laundry is put out into social media troll world for public consumption so that he can get attention, likes and clicks and endorsements and opportunities. He still thinks that certain things are sacred and should be kept behind closed doors, this being one of them. Comments and opinions and takes on how their kids are being raised. So I appreciate that as well. So overall, yeah, I would say kudos to Joc. Not from the standpoint of it being adversarial towards women, but from the standpoint of him being a principled guy who is at any moment willing to stop the proceedings to say, we need to deal with this right now because this is something that my ethics and my moral code won't let slide beyond this moment in time. And I pride myself on being the same kind of way. So I appreciate watching that play out in real time.
Well said.
One more thing. We got somebody in the comments of the stream, so I didn't want to ignore them. No, we do not ignore the chat, Remnant Princess. We just get into the commentary. But I appreciate you here. She said she did a video on this recently. So she asked whether we ignore the chat, and I'm just letting her know that we do not. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so but yeah, if you watch any of like Joc's interviews that he has like on DJ Vlad's channel, it's, you can tell he's a cerebral person in the sense that he's aware of his surroundings, and because the questions that were getting pitched toward him, he can either go yay or nay, and he chose to be neutral in his stance, in the sense that, hey, that's how they rock, that's how they do things, that's not how I do it, but that's how they choose to do it, and blah 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 blah, and I'm not trying to knock them, kind of thing. And most people would take the bait and ride on whoever the question's about, but he chose to play it in the middle, being very diplomatic about his answers and his responses. And that's, to me, somebody that's aware of who's watching it and who will be consuming this later. So same thing with this situation, where he's fully aware that the kids are going to see this.
Yeah.
And so and what happens is, with these programs, where it's reality, and I put reality in air quotes, but it is a sense of people actually talking about their personal lives. So that's the real part of it. And so when they're sitting there trying to give good enough content for whatever platform it is, they're going to start airing certain things that is in-house. And typically that's what makes for good TV. And so when people are doing that, that's kind of the norm of what reality TV has become. And honestly, it's intent from the beginning, to be honest.
Yeah.
But him being aware of who's going to be watching this, who's going to be consuming this, and how he will be perceived by not only the masses but his own children, it's like, hey, I have to put a stop to this in a way. And and I appreciate how he handled it. It could have got a little bit more heated than that, but they both held their cool there, and tempers didn't overtly flare. So I appreciated the whole conversation there. It clearly had to be something that needed to be had. And like I said earlier, and I brought it towards the mothers, but yeah, you had mentioned kind of a thing where, it's either side. And so, and if the father has some choice words about his mama, how will that play in the young man's perception of women that he's going to be dealing with later on in life? And, well, I don't want nothing like this, I don't want nothing like that, because my dad had to deal with that with my mom, blah, blah, blah. And so that could also create unnecessary toxicities later on in people's lives.
Yeah, exactly.
I appreciate all of this. Joc, he had his moments where he was doing things that seemed to be for the clicks and views. Like right when he started doing this, like, you know, because he's been stopped making music, you know, in the mainstream sense. But then he started transitioning over to this reality lifestyle stuff. And, you know, he had a few things, you know, meme worthy that he was doing that was kind of trollish. But I think he has hit this this stride, as you mentioned, where, hey, I don't know why I didn't notice this before, kind of thing. I think he's just really grown up in a lot of ways, and he knows, and he gives a lot of credit to his father, how he was raised and why he sees the world the way that he does. So he had a principal man in his life, because he said his father was principal. So he had a principal man in his life who bestowed that upon him, and now he's trying to make sure that that's what happens with his children. And so so if there's anybody out there that didn't have that or didn't see that, this was a good window on how to carry yourself in a principled fashion, as you mentioned. So overall, good dialogue here. Good dialogue.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously there was room for that situation to become even more contentious than it was. And I don't even really think it was contentious. I think that they were having a constructive dialogue right there in front of the camera. It didn't really devolve into like a shouting match, you know. But yet and still, she has respect for that guy, because if she didn't, she would have just continued to argue with him, and she would have continued to state her claim and do as best a job she could of making it clear that she was in the right in terms of that argument. The fact that she let it go and was like, okay, I won't say it anymore, is indicative of the level of respect that she has for him, despite whatever things she might have an issue with, that she would then turn around as a tool to suggest she doesn't want her own son to be this way, juxtaposed to things that she noticed about him. But it didn't go there. It didn't go that far, because she has enough respect for their dynamic and for him as a man and as a human being and as a person to say, I hear where you're coming from. And at the very least, we might not see eye to eye, but I'll respect your wishes in this moment. And, you know, at the end of the day, we talk about this often. This can be another, you know, relationship angle. You know, respect is everything when it comes to this stuff. And so, like, with Joc being a principled person, women respect men of principle. Good women, at least, they respect men of principle, regardless of, you know, how much he's achieved or lack thereof, how much money he has or lack thereof. Women respect men of principle. They do. Whether they will get into a marriage or relationship with them is a different subject, somewhat. But at the end of the day, there is respect present for a guy who lives by a code. And so the fact that she didn't engage in a back and forth heated dispute for mass consumption is indicative of the level of respect that she has for him, which to me is indicative of him choosing to live a principled lifestyle. And, you know, I just hope that more guys understand the importance of that, especially a guy like him, because far too often we don't see enough examples of these hip hop dudes being principled. We see far too many examples of hip hop dudes being slaves to pussy, living for vagina. Basically, they'll do whatever it takes to get women and money. And when you're a principled guy, there are some things that you will not compromise in the pursuit of women and or money. And I think that that would help with, you know, forming more non-toxic functional relationships and marriages, which these days everybody claims is something that they want, which is cap in some regard. But there's a good percentage of people who, when they say that, they actually mean it. And so, you know, if you ascribe to this urban culture, this hip hop culture, this type of hip hop lifestyle, it's helpful to see a guy who comes from that mold, who was in that ecosystem, being a principled individual. So perhaps that's a good thing to emulate. Not that I'm in favor of emulating hip hop people, because I'm not. But if we are in a society or in a culture in which we do tend to emulate what we see before us with some of these guys, That's a quality that I'm in favor of, is being principled. I'm big on principle. It's something that it's one of my biggest mantras in life. And so I think it fuels everything. You have more success in life as an individual. You have more success in life via community. You have more success in life via your relationships as a man when you choose to have ethics and moral codes and live by a principle. And so if you can see a hip hop guy doing that, I think that it's a helpful thing. So that's even more evidence of how appreciative I am towards, what that particular clip represented. So, I'm on board.
Absolutely. Well said. Well said, bro.
Yeah. So, shouts out to Yung Joc. That does not mean that I'm going to start watching Love and Hip Hop, because I'm not. But, nevertheless, it's good to see that. So, appreciate that. Appreciate the content. Thanks a lot. Good luck. Hopefully your kids don't grow up to hate you.
Yeah. Keep it up, Joc. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Keep it up for real. Okay, so next up, we are going to talk about a short clip that was a part of a longer video that was published to the 8 at the Table channel on YouTube. 8 at the Table, popular YouTube channel. They got like 145,000 subs, a lot of videos. They get a lot of clicks, a lot of views. So they're big on the hip hop scene, dealing with modern relationships. So this was a short clip from a longer clip on that channel. I will post, obviously the link to this clip is in the description of this video, but I'll also post a link to the longer video from the 8 at the Table show. It's about a 45-minute conversation. Some good stuff. But in this particular clip, the content creator, what's her name? I forget her name. Her name is Pearl, and she has a channel herself called Just Pearly Things, so y'all can check that out as well. But her name is Pearl. She likes to bring a lot of statistics and analytical data into the relationship conversation. And so on this particular excerpt from the 8 at the Table episode in which she appeared in, she's talking about how government programs and things like child support and alimony have added to the disillusionment of modern relationships. So we'll go ahead and play this one as well, and then we will provide our 2 cents on what we thought about this too.
Why I think women are worse nowadays is we're bailed out. We are paid to leave marriages, and we're paid to be single mothers. If you pay someone to do something, they're going to do more of it.
You don't fear consequence.
Yeah, and so when women, like men, and if men were paid to be single fathers, I'm sure there would be more.
What?
and so what happens is women, like, again, how do most relationships start? Situationships, and girls want to get the kid from the guy, and they want to get pregnant. There's whole Reddit threads of women trying to figure out how to get a guy, get a guy's kid. And even this has been on national TV. This is how big this problem is. And it's because when women get on birth control, they say they're off of it, or they get in that situation because they want to get the top 20% of men.
And right on cue, an ad plays. Once the video is ended. So yeah, she's talking about women wanting to get the top 20% of men or whatever, and child support and things like that being used as a tool to get men, but then also a bailout and a catalyst for why relationships fail, because women want the kid. And then I'm guessing what she's meaning is you get the kid and then you have a revenue stream as a result. No need to keep the relationship going when I now have what I was out for, which was the revenue stream. So again, there was a lot more in that particular video from 8 at the Table. I will post a link to that video in the description of this video so that y'all can check that out. But Penny, for your thoughts on this particular angle of it.
This is a deep topic, in the sense, at least for me, and in the sense that this plays into politics and what the government has done in order to I mean, they call it subsidies and stuff like that, but these types of government programs, there's a rhetoric out there that it's intentional. And I would argue that it also is, in the sense that there's enough statistics out there that shows that if you're giving people money, it incentivizes them to do whatever you're giving them money for. And so there's enough statistics out there that shows that if you're giving, for in this situation, single mothers, more money just for having children, then there's going to be women who see the benefit of just having children and not having a father in the house. And so, my problem with this isn't so much women; it's more or less the structure that we have politically that enables this type of behavior. And I had a discussion, with somebody, close to me about situations like this, because they were upset. They were upset, that certain government funding was going to get cut or whatever. And but I was like, if if you have a child and you're raising that child, wouldn't you want that child to go out and achieve things and get things done instead of always turning around and asking you for money? Because if you keep just giving the child money and bailing them out, then the only thing that you're doing is enabling bad habits. But if they have to actually get up and go get a job and achieve, then at that point, and make their own money, then at that point, they'll be less dependent on you, the parent. And so in these situations where they give women, welfare, certain amounts of food stamps, when it comes to divorce and other things, overwhelmingly amount of alimonies and all this other stuff, then it's incentivizing women to get divorced. It's incentivizing women to not have a man in the house, because if there's a man in the house, then you get less money or no money at all. So it actually encourages this. And so since the implementation of these programs, the single parent households have increased. And so if there is a problem, I don't want to direct it directly towards women. Women are just doing what humans do. And that's why I related it to a child. So that can be male or female. And if you enable a child in their bad habits and reward them for doing nothing, then at that point, they're going to continue to do nothing and wait for handouts. And so in these situations where she said in this entire Reddit posts and threads and stuff like that, where it's not all women, it's the women that are looking to do nothing and get something for nothing. They're conspiring in Reddit threads and other platforms on how they can get a check with staying at home. So that's my take on it. I think it's more of a political thing, and how the political infrastructure is set up and that enables this type of behavior. So what about you, sir? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, you asked the question, wouldn't you want your child to be able to go out and learn how to be self-sufficient and, earn and make money and do all of this stuff instead of always turning around and asking you for a bailout?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer to your question is for women who for women who approach relationships from the standpoint to have a child so that it can directly benefit them, they don't care. So they don't care whether they are raising a child to always turn around and ask for money as a bailout, because their motivation for having children in the first place had nothing to do with the child and had everything to do with them.
Mm-hmm.
So if your approach to having children is having a child by a man with money and resources so that you have the option to leave the relationship but still be taken care of financially, it stands to reason that the reason why you wanted to have that child in the first place had everything to do with how it would benefit you, and not with having a child because you wanted to have a child and raise a family. So Sadly, the answer to that question is no. For women who operate in this kind of space, they don't think about that because what they're thinking about is themselves when it comes to their motivations for having kids. But moreover, I thought when I first watched this, I asked myself, and I still don't know the answer to this question.
Mhm.
I asked myself a chicken or the egg question,
Mhm.
right? So when you say chicken or the egg, it's a which came first.
Mhm.
Which came first, hypergamy or subsidized programs? Which one of those things came first? Historically, one might argue hypergamy came first because things like child support and alimony are like a modern civilization type phenomenon. I don't
Mhm.
think that there was alimony and child support during ancient times where essentially the men with money and resources were given the opportunity to procreate. And, poor men and men of service were disqualified from having the opportunity to do so. So if you fast forward into modern times, I often talk about hypergamy because
Mhm.
I think hypergamy is at the root of what is messing relationships up. And for anyone who's unaware of what I mean by hypergamy, so real quick, hypergamy is the practice of civil unions, in this case, marriage, on the basis of an individual who can be a provider. So because we built this thing off of the patriarchy, hypergamy essentially means women marrying men who have money and resources. That's the basic explanation of it. There's more into the definition, but that bottom line is what that means. Now, that's a very normal thing, is choosing your spouse or your significant other based upon certain parameters that you feel are important. Like you want someone who has the wherewithal to earn and provide. That's basic. Those are basic hypergamy principles. So, in other words, a guy who's poor, who can't provide, who has no tangible skills to speak of, and who can't be a provider for a spouse or a child would not be suitable to procreate because he just doesn't have the means to be able to take care of his business. And so those guys are in effect disqualified from having the opportunity to have kids, and that woman exercised hypergamy. Hypergamy is something that's been around for a long time. In my opinion, I do find it to be practical because I don't think any guy should be having kids or trying to maintain families when he does not have the wherewithal to provide for them. That's my personal opinion. But where I started using the term hypergamy is when the concept of hypergamy suddenly went on steroids, where it suddenly became a woman's prerogative to disregard men who are able providers and who can earn money and do what they want to do because you feel as though it's your prerogative to reach for the stars and date a guy who is a top 10 percenter or a top 20 percenter because in your mind that's what being a provider means. So no longer is it sufficient enough for a guy to be an adequate earner in the 60, 70, 80K range. You need your guy to be the tallest of the tallest and the fittest of the fittest, the most intelligent of the intelligent, but also be a millionaire or make $100,000 plus a year. And that's what is suddenly becoming the baseline standard for being able to get a successful relationship as a man. I characterize that as hypergamy. I started using the term hypergamy to describe that. Now, why do I bring that up? I bring that up because if we're going to tie that into this woman's central point, I believe that hypergamy preceded the advent of things like these programs and whatnot. Because I think what started happening was women would exercise their hypergamistic tendencies and get with men who have extreme value. And then the motivation suddenly became to dissolve the relationship because they knew that they were going to be taken care of by these incentivized programs. So I think the programs accelerated the rate of relationship anarchy, but I think the progeniting behavior was women becoming hypergamous in the first place. Now, you know, I think men open the door for hypergamy to take place, personally, in my opinion. But I think that this idea of incentive programs, child support, alimony, I think that all of that stuff is sort of a byproduct of what I think is a preceding behavior and habit that was going on for some period of time before all of that stuff started. Now, of course, that doesn't go so far as me saying that she doesn't have a point, because she does. I just think that it's a smaller component within a larger picture of a lot of other things going on. And so, I think that if hypergamy wasn't actually a thing, women wouldn't care so much about getting with top 20 percenters. And then those, relationships proceeding to have a higher rate of ending, because there's incentive to end, because you lose nothing by the relationship ending, because you'll be taken care of after the fact. So, it all factors into it. It speaks to the extreme level of imbalance with what's going on, which, all this stuff is a factor. It's not just one thing, it's several things going on concurrently. I just kind of look at it and I'll say, okay, well, what was the progenation of a lot of this stuff? Because, there was, hypergamy taking place before we had these programs. I would just imagine that before we had these programs, women either stayed in the relationship because they saw that there was no incentive to leave, or they left but had to figure out how to be self-sufficient upon leaving, because they knew that they could not be taken care of by, agendas and governments and programs that saw fit to extract a man's resources in order to continue to take care of women who otherwise can't take care of themselves, for something that they willfully got themselves involved in, when you talk about marrying a man, or at the very least having a child with him. So I think there's a lot of things going on. So you started off by saying that it's something that runs deep. I completely agree, obviously. It's not so simple as merely saying child support has messed it up because women can leave and still get money. There's more going on. There's more to it than that. And I kind of, trace it all the way back to the source of when we had this shift in the motivation for modern women to even start to enter relationships in the first place. What is that motivation, and how has that contributed to some of these ancillary observations, such as alimony and child support?
Well, so my stance is that there's been enough evidence. If they actually wanted, if the government subsidies were to actually help women initially, well, there's enough empirical data to go, hey, this isn't working. It's actually breaking up households instead of actually making more functional ones. Then at that point, if they were actually doing these things to actually help people, then they would find a way to develop these programs so people could use them initially, so they can get on their feet and then be on their way. And so, for instance, when I was in college, I was getting food stamps, and while I was getting food stamps, of course, I had a job, but my job didn't give enough hours and all this other stuff. So I found out I qualified for food stamps, so I was getting food stamps. And so as I was getting the food stamps, I didn't want food stamps forever. But as I was struggling to pay bills and all this other stuff, yeah, that shit helped. But then it got to a point where I had to renew. And I was in between a crossroads. Either I could get more hours from work, which would pay me more money, but then I would be disqualified for food stamps, or I could not get more hours, because if I got more hours, I would have more money, but I wouldn't have enough money for food. So, or I could not get more hours, get paid less, but still have more money for food. So while I was torn between that crossroads, it was like average hours or something like that. So I decided to get less working hours so I can get more food stamps. I didn't plan on being on food stamps for that next cycle. I wanted more hours. But so that was me in that little situation. So I can only imagine if there's women out there who have, multiple kids or a kid or something like that. And these programs are saying, no, you can just stay at home. And now you got Section 8 and your rent is little to nothing every month. Or they could go out and do for themselves and struggle in this economy or whatever and try to make it happen. But you're not going to be paying $8 a month in rent. So which one are you going to choose? Nah, I'm going to choose to not work and only pay $8 a month in rent. And if I have more kids, that's more money every cycle. So it incentivizes people to not do anything.
Yeah.
So then that's why you have these circles of welfare kids and welfare babies where there's no father in the house. And the mother is just either at home or work a little to nothing job so she can keep the cycles going. And the kids are running amok. And in our last discussion, we talked about a principal man in a marriage, in a situation where he's trying to instill principles into his own child. But if these programs are saying no man can be in a house, because that's what these programs do, then there is no principles being installed into these kids, male or female. And so then in these areas where there's high welfare, I'm sure there's a correlation of high crime. And crime itself is an industry because, well, crime pays. And it pays the government. It pays other things. It keeps certain people out of certain loops. So there's a cycle that there's enough statistics on this to show that if you want crime to go down, if you want other things to go down, then we need more solid family structures. But if there's these things in place that circumvent that, it doesn't allow for it because human nature takes over and humans are naturally lazy. I would argue humans are naturally lazy. They naturally just want to do nothing. There's people that want to do stuff, but overall, what I mean by lazy, I mean it requires effort in life to be to succeed and to do things. And what I've realized in human behavior is a lot of people, and all of the stuff that we talk about every week, they choose to not take that extra effort to be a better version of themselves because that's the more normal thing to do. It's easy to do that. So when I say lazy, I mean it's easy. It's easy to not do anything. And so these programs make it easy for people to live in houses they can't afford, be in neighborhoods that they wouldn't otherwise be in, and other things. And then the paycheck is pumping out more kids. So I that's where that's why my arrow is pointed towards these programs. It's not so much of the hypergamous stuff because the hypergamy things, they played a role in a sense where women couldn't have jobs like that, high paying jobs. And so times have changed and women can go get a good job. And so, but those programs were going around where, patriarchy was really in control. But now that's not really as big of a thing. And women can go get themselves a nice paying job, go get educated and do all these things that they couldn't do back before those programs were a thing. So, I think that these programs are a big component of why we're seeing all these things. And this stuff ties in, like I said, this stuff ties into crime. It ties into other things that actually cripple our society. So I'm not in favor of them. If they do have these programs, there has to be a program that incentivizes getting out of this circumstance. And every once in a while, with these programs, they tell people, hey, you got to go get a job. Yeah, they go get a job. They finesse it. They go get a job for a little bit and then they quit or whatever, and they satisfied it for that cycle. But there is no, people can do this their entire lives. And then when you pass through the projects and then you see a mother in there with a baby on her hip and kids running around, the yard or the whatever you want to call it, and they just running around, no father in sight. And that's just that one door. Then you go to the next door, you see the same thing going on. And so if the programs were actually set up to not incentivize them to keep pumping out more kids, because that's why they have multiple baby fathers, because the first guy may not sign up for the next one.
Well, multiple checks, though.
Multiple checks.
Multiple checks.
Yeah, and the first guy's not going to keep going back to that because she ain't really doing much anyway, and I just need checks. So yeah, I point my finger firmly at these programs. Of course, there's other things, human nature, that plays into these things. But as she said, if men were getting incentivized for this, then men would be doing more of this type of behavior. But we're not. So we're on the outside looking in, pointing fingers at women. But because the programs don't fit men, they fit women. And I think that this is just a byproduct of human nature being exploited. So,
yeah. No, that's 100% right, and it's an archaic system, right? Because if you look at any data present, data, for multiple factors, like the equality initiative, the social justice initiatives, because of different factors, women's opportunities, women's salaries, women's places in corporate positions and in other career trajectories has gone up tremendously. There's information out there which shows that the average median income for women has surpassed men, in large part because women are getting opportunities at a higher rate juxtaposed to men, because the idea is women need their chance to catch up. So there's even less information to support this idea that we still need to utilize systems in which a man has to support a woman raising a child. Right. And, none of this stuff ever made sense to me anyway, because my whole thing has always been, okay, I understand, the woman bore the child. Mm-hmm. But if we are dealing with a situation in which the man makes all the money, then give the man custody and let the man take care of the child, if that's the case. Right? Like if the woman is not self-sufficient, doesn't have any practical skills, or doesn't have a career or anything like that to fall back on, so that she can start earning and contributing and be someone who can adequately care for a child, then custody should go to the man, period. If that's the case. So a lot of these, and again, some child support expert who watches this video will probably be like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, there's enough data and evidence, like you said, to show that none of these programs ever really worked. And furthermore, like, if it was all about who has the resources necessary to take care of the kid, then what's with the custody situation? Just let the man take care of the child if he has the means to do so. So, none of it ever really made sense. But even in the modern day sense, it definitely doesn't apply, because women are outpacing men now in terms of salary and opportunity. So a lot of this stuff needs to be revisited for sure. But what I find most fascinating about a lot of it is it isn't as much an economic thing anymore. It's like a social practice now. Like, it isn't just poor, disenfranchised people who are gaming this system. It's middle class and upper middle class people who are getting into it's middle and upper class. I'm not trying to zero it in on women, but it can be middle to upper class and even affluent women who are who are doing this, who actively see that there's no penalty that I can pay if the marriage that I'm entering into with this guy doesn't succeed, because if it doesn't, I'm still taken care of on the back end. Right. So where is my incentive to stay if I'm not happy and unwilling to work it out, which leads to what? More relationships breaking down, more marriages breaking down, more co-parenting situations, more dysfunctional situations. So it doesn't matter what level you look at it from an economic standpoint, from whether it's poor people, middle class people, upper class people, it's not working on any level.
Right.
So regardless, it needs to be revisited. So I'm completely behind everything that you said. And yeah, I think the impetus of it could very well be the programs. It's just the hypergamy part I'm looking at, because where my mind went to it from is, okay, well, in the modern day sense, why are we even still dealing with this when you have all of these women out here making more money than men,
Right.
who are getting more opportunities than men? So from that standpoint, the only reason why we're still seeing this stuff is because you have these women who, despite this, are saying, I'm going to still aspire for that 20%. And I am incentivized to not have to stay in it if I'm unhappy, because I'm
Right.
still going to be taken care of.
Right.
So it's all gone wrong on every level that you look at it. It's just all messed up.
Right.
And it really doesn't, we really need to get rid of this stuff. But like you said, people are inherently looking for the easy way out. It's 100% true. People, it is human nature that once you spot something that allows you to get around something with ease, but still get the same reward, you're going to take advantage of that. You're going to milk it for all it's worth.
Right.
But this seems to be the one thing where they're saying, hey, ride this sucker out for 18 years. I've been on unemployment. I couldn't do it past 6 months. No matter what my situation was. If after 6 months I wasn't reemployed, I was on my ass. So even some of these other programs, which I would argue unemployment also doesn't work, but even unemployment works to a certain extent. After a certain amount of time, you get cut off. And they say it doesn't matter what you got going on, bro. You need to either figure this out or die trying. Or maybe not, or maybe you just get phased out and you end up destitute. But you can't ride this whole thing for a long time. But when it comes to, these other things like child support, they give you an 18-year leash to basically just receive a check for not contributing anything.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think there's multiple things going on. I think that, like you said and what she said, it's definitely factoring into why a lot of relationships are not working anymore, but it's a component in a larger, pot of why they're not working. It is unfortunate,
Yeah, and I'll also say this. So I spoke about the government programs, and it's also because we touched on alimony. It's also the judicial system, and so every man knows if he gets married, he's going to get railroaded if there's a divorce, and so if all men know that, so do all women. And so it doesn't incentivize them to stay. And so if there's a situation where, I've paid my fees for this, that's what the women are saying. Like, I did my time. I got married, we was in it for 3, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is. I can cash out now. Now I'm going to get a check for just being divorced. And there's also that game also being played. And so, yeah, the whole system, the way it's set up, to me, if men were actually men in this country, then at that point, this country couldn't be run rampant by corporations. And corporations who, through lobbying and other things, they make sure that the country stays in the situation that it is, so they can always stay at an advantage. But if men were actually men on their square, having families, raising principled children, then that challenges consumerism.
Yeah.
And so the judicial system, all of these programs, they are all, to me, used to conspire against masculinity as a whole. And so if you don't have fathers in the household, if you don't have, then you're raising generations of children, men who aren't going to be as firm on their square as they need to be, women who are now more inclined to milk the system later on when they grow up. and then do the same cycle to the next generation of men, and so on and so forth. And that's why divorce rates are so high now. On top of all these other influences that are bombarding them through consumerism. So it's a perpetuating cycle of madness. And the key component of it is targeting masculinity as a whole, in my opinion. And we talked about this before, about how masculinity is being targeted. And I think that this is a component of masculinity being targeted by taxing them. And if I tax you, then at this point, you're not going to have enough financial grounding to pass on generational wealth if I tax you.
Yeah.
So if we incentivize the women to tax you, it's not coming from us. That's what they're saying, the government. The women are doing it to you. But we're going to empower them to do that to you. And then the human nature aspect comes in of getting something for nothing. And like you said, if you can find a way to get to that task by just floating on a lazy river instead of using your feet and walking, people are going to use that lazy river, especially if they can get there faster. So that's why these programs, to me, are so detrimental. And if politics and the government was run the way that everybody thinks that it should be run, then this would have been rectified a long time ago. But for the mere reason that it's still going on now, after so many generations of empirical evidence, to me, this screams conspiratorial type of stuff, in the sense that masculinity is being targeted. So so is it the government per se? I just told you, corporations low key run the government. And so through their lobbying and through their efforts to make sure that people just consume. And so that's why I said this is such a nuanced conversation, so many angles to it. And but I feel like we're touching on enough of the antennae, that's going on here.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. Because even think about this, is the last thing that I'll say. Even think about the majority of people who participate in the consumer industry are people from lower socioeconomic situations,
right?
Because when you don't come from much, you have a higher propensity to spend your money on anything,
right?
So it stands to reason that when you are perpetuating this cycle of not raising people to be principled, you're also not raising people to understand the importance of valuing what they earn. And so they'll just blow it on anything, which, to your point, funnels said corporations, because the majority of the revenue that these companies make come from people who can't even afford to own their own home, but they'll go out and finance a car or buy, $400 sets of headphones or jewelry that they shouldn't buy because they should be saving up to get their own apartment, or saving up to maybe putting money away for a college fund or something like that. So absolutely, it all goes hand in hand for sure. And I do think that it's intentional for sure. And I think that it's been a very effective tactic to make it seem as though the proprietors of this whole thing are women themselves, when in actuality it's capitalism. I'll say that.
There you go. Well said. Well said.
Yeah, no, we're on the same page there. It's just on the back end, it's unfortunate because of the rash disillusionment of relationships in the modern day sense. And what's crazy to me is, like I said, it's affecting all economic levels. It's not just the poor and the disenfranchised anymore. It's everywhere.
Yep.
And so, candidly, if I can speak for myself, it affects a guy in my shoes who's just out here looking for, a mate, and is experiencing difficulty because now I have to weed through all of this white noise. So, and this is just one piece of white noise in addition to all the other white noise that's out there. So,
agreed.
Yeah, but what are you gonna do, man? You just got to keep trying, right?
Yeah. and if you're a principled man, have your filters on and don't be tempted by temptation, and make sure you find you a principled woman, because they're out there.
Yeah, they are. And they can be just as fun as the temptation.
Exactly.
All right. With that said, man, that was a good conversation. I enjoyed that one. Next up, we are going to talk about Julia Fox, former girlfriend of Kanye West. Julia Fox and Kanye dated earlier this year for like a month or some change. It wasn't very long. Julia Fox is a Hollyweird actress. She was in the movie. The only movie that I know her from personally is Uncut Gems, which was actually a good movie. It's probably the only good Adam Sandler movie, in my opinion, that Adam Sandler has ever made. It's a Netflix movie.
Oh, okay.
Well, that wasn't a comedy, so I guess
Okay,
a lot
okay,
of people
okay.
love his Happy Gilmore.
I mean, I
Billy
got one here or
Madison
there,
stuff.
but
Yeah. But other than that, like in terms of movies that he's made more recently, Uncut Gems was an actually good movie, which is, I think he only acted in that movie. I don't think he had anything to do with the writing or directing, which makes sense as to why it was actually good. But yeah, so Julia Fox was in Uncut Gems. So she's a Hollyweird actress. She dated Kanye for a while, and recently she wanted to clear the air on why she dated Kanye in the first place. So I guess what was happening here is people were questioning, why were you dating this guy? Because Kanye is one of these guys who lately has been dealing with negative press for some of his public comments. Some of them make sense, some of them don't, but whatever. That's not the video for this. It depends on your personal opinion on stuff. But nevertheless, I guess she's taking shrapnels of criticism for dating him. And so I guess she felt the need to kind of clear the air and explain why she dated him. So apparently it had nothing to do with him in the first place, and there was a specific reason as to why she dated him. So we're going to go ahead and play this, and then we'll talk about her comments once we finish listening to what she had to say.
Okay, since I was just going to write about it in my book and then have y'all buy it, but I'll just tell you guys for free. First of all, the man was being normal around me. And not only that, but the Kardashians, when I had a fashion line 10 years ago, they actually bought our clothes and sold them in their stores. And so I've always had a love for Kim, especially, and like even Courtney, especially, like all of them pretty much. But no, like the big three: Chloe, Kim, Courtney. Those are my girls. Anyway, so by the time me and him got together, it was like he hadn't been doing anything, like out there yet. The only thing he had done was change the name in the song and said, like, "Come back to me, Kimberly." That was like really the only thing when we met. But I remember just being like, he was texting me. I wasn't really answering. I was like, I don't really want to hook up with a celebrity again. Like, if nothing, you know what I mean? Nothing ever comes of it. It's like, they're kind of boring. Like, they're not what you think they're going to be like. But he kept going and going. And he was like, you have bad text etiquette. And then I was like, oh my God, Kanye's yelling at me. Like, what do I do? But then I had this thought. And I was like, oh my God, maybe I can get him off Kim's case. Like, maybe I can distract him, like just get him to like me. And I knew, I was like, if anyone can do it, it's me, because when I set my mind to something, I do it. And I will say that month that we spent together, he wasn't on Twitter. First of all, he wasn't on any forms of social media. He didn't even talk about his relationship. We only really talked about clothes and like weird ideas and plans for the future and our hopes and dreams for childhood and education. And like, it was really beautiful, guys. The moment he started tweeting, I was out. And that's the thing. It's like the media reported on our relationship ending like a week after it happened or something. So during that week, I think you guys all thought we were together, but we weren't. I'd already been like, dude, I'm not going to stick around for this shit. And also, I realized pretty quickly that he wasn't going to take my help. I was like, I want to help him. I want to help him. I sounded almost as dumb as you guys saying that I should have done something to stop him from saying, like, what? But anyway, I was delusional. I thought I could help him. Anyway, it didn't work. And now we're here. But that being said, really deeply respect the man as an artist. I don't want to shit on that. I don't want to reduce his whole career to his really bad moments, But that being said, I stand with the Jewish community, period.
Wow, What the hell?
That last part is hilarious.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
So, so apparently, she only dated him to get his mind off of Kim Kardashian, or rather, to get him off of Kim Kardashian's case. That is, according to her, that's why she did this, to get him off of Kim, because she, was trying to help the Kardashians out. So maybe I can help by taking his mind off that situation, according to her. So, I don't know, man. Those are her words. So I'm not. Do you have a reaction to what she said?
Yeah. So what she said was a roundabout definition of the term handler. So Kanye, in the midst of his many rants, he said in one of them that he had handlers around him to keep him silent. So the only thing that she just explained was, she said Kim. She did it to keep his mind off Kim. Okay, I'll give her that. But she was also saying that he wasn't tweeting, y'all. He wasn't doing nothing of that. Basically saying I was keeping him calm and docile. And when Kanye was talking about his relationship with Kim, and his Hollywood lifestyle and the Hollywood life he was living, he was always talking about how people around him were telling him to not say this, not do that, and to keep him in line. Now, whatever things he was trying to say or do or whatever, good, bad, or ugly, I'm not here to determine that. All I'm saying is what he was trying to do as a person, he was being muffled by the people that were around him. And so this woman here, after he leaves Kim, it may have been an APB out on this guy, and a situation like, hey, this guy's a loose cannon. All right, he's a wild firecracker. Somebody has to put this out. She was close enough to the situation, so she tried her hand in keeping him calm. They eventually broke up, according to her words, and then he goes DEFCON 3. Right. So that didn't happen on her watch, she says. That quote also that they had in there from whatever comment, they said violent misogynist.
Mm-hmm.
And now I don't know at what point Kanye got violent with anything or anyone. And if we want to talk about dangerous rhetoric being used on the internet, I feel like that's dangerous towards Kanye West. And
or for that matter, when was he actually being a misogynist?
I don't know either. So for that to be her selective quote that she wanted to go on her explanation on, I found that also very interesting as well. So she said that she's close to the Kardashians. All right, all of them. They help her get her shine by putting her clothes in their stores and all of that. So she owes them. So I wouldn't be surprised if this was a favor called in by the Kardashians. Yeah, it goes that deep in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And so, hey, this guy's a loose cannon. All right. Kim said, hey, I tried to keep him calm. I tried. He left. Somebody get him. So they call this Fox lady to throw the box at him and to try to keep him docile. He wasn't going for it, and they broke up. And then he started to do his thing tweeting. So to me, I felt like this was if there was a definition of handler, all right, which I'm sure there is, but if there's I guess more modern definition of the term handler, in the Webster's, all right, this image of her laying down in the bed would be there, and then this will be an explanation of what a handler actually looks like and sound like, because it sounds like to me she tried to do her job, but he escaped and he ended up doing whatever he ended up doing. So initial thoughts here. How about you, sir? How do you feel about this?
Yeah, it's crazy that you said that, because that was the first thing I thought of too. I said, oh, she must have been dispatched.
Yeah.
I said she must have been dispatched as a sleeper cell by the Kardashians to quell Kanye's. But here's the thing. Kanye has always had a mind of his own, but he was not prone to violent outbursts pre-Kardashian.
Agreed.
So it seems to me that this Julia Fox woman was dispatched as a sleeper cell on behalf of the Kardashians to clean up a mess that was made by the Kardashians. And I personally believe that family is soulless. And when you have no soul, you will send sleeper cells out to handle people that you purportedly cared about, because you didn't actually care about them, because you have no soul. So it just kind of seems to me like she was an agent that was sent to do a job, and the job lasted for 30 days, and after that she was no longer equipped with the means to do her job effectively. This is weird. This is Holly weird stuff. I think, I don't agree with everything Kanye says. I do agree with a lot of what he says. Well, let me take that back. Philosophically, I agree with most of what he says, but at times I disagree with his execution in terms of the manner in which he chooses to go about delivering his message. But the message itself, I tend to not disagree with. But the one thing that I've always disagreed with him is his decision to get involved with that family. And I don't understand how someone who can be as forthright and convicted as he is, based upon how he was when he first showed up in the early 2000s, make the decision to get involved with something as perverse as that. I've never understood that. I don't get it. Which it kind of tells me that there's something else that must be going on with this that we don't know about, that we're not privy to publicly. And there's probably some people somewhere being paid a whole lot of money to keep a muzzle on this, the way that they keep trying to keep a muzzle on Kanye. It's crazy. This is like the second topic in a row where we're kind of going conspiratorial, but it is what it is. Like, when stuff doesn't add up, there must be something that we don't know, that if we plug that piece of the puzzle in, it would make it add up, is all I'm saying.
Right.
And it's hard for me to see somebody going from, y'all can't make it to Balance to choose leadership, but we can go to Jacobs and to the dealership. It's hard for me to internalize an individual who talks like that getting married to a soulless individual like Kim Kardashian,
because her rep was already out there before he did it. So
I don't get it. But and when it comes to Julia Fox, it's just like she's just a pawn in the Hollywood game. Kanye might not be the first person that she was dispatched to put a muzzle on. If you look at her physically, she's got everything in all the right places. So if she bats an eye at a guy in Hollywood, he'll probably melt like butter. Because if you just pull up a Google image of her, pull her up on Google Images, you can see what her body looks like. She's got them all in the right places. So she certainly appeals to Hollywood guys who are slaves enough to vagina that if she shows up, they'll, fall victim to her feminine wiles, right? And so that's pretty much the part that she plays in all of this. But I really feel like, you brought up the comment that was on her feed, which prompted her to respond. I think it was the last part of that comment that made her do the video in the first place. I don't think she was responding to the misogynistic or the violent part. I think she was responding to the anti-Semite part. because right now it's hot right now for anybody who is even remotely perceived to be an anti-Semite, and furthermore, it's hot for you to be associated with someone who is perceived to be an anti-Semite. So if you got all of these people coming from you in troll world asking why would you get with an anti-Semite, it now behooves you to publicly explain why you would associate yourself with someone who is an anti-Semite. For the record, I'm not saying Kanye is an anti-Semite. I'm saying that's what they're saying. They're saying he's an anti-Semite. And so she had to kind of do her own personal form of damage control to clear the air on why she would ever get with someone who's an anti-Semite, because that's what troll world and modern cancel culture is now. You're even guilty by association. Even if Kanye does his own thing, making his own comments, if you were in a relationship with him 6, 7, 8 months ago, or whenever that was, you now have to clarify where you stand on this issue, because if not, troll world will take the liberty of dragging you through the mud. So that's probably the only angle that I'll come at it from in terms of kind of defending her. But otherwise, I just feel like she's a sleeper agent. She was a sleeper cell. She was dispatched as you said, handler to try and get the reins on Kanye, but there is no reining in on Kanye. So I don't know what other talent she has, but hopefully she can continue to find work in Hollywood as a dispatcher, or rather as someone to be dispatched in Hollywood, because it appears as though that's sort of one of her primary faculties. So it is what it is, man.
Yeah,
weird stuff. Very weird.
It is weird, and in narcissism and in the narcissist universe, all right, because so Hollywood or Hollywood, right? They have their handlers, because they have to make sure that people go with the status quo, and so there's handlers everywhere in that industry. Then on the individual personal level, a narcissist has their own handlers, and in narcissism they call them flying monkeys, and those are the people that are around the narcissist who enable the narcissist. And they do the bidding of the narcissist when the narcissist is not around. And so basically the flying monkeys are the handlers for the narcissist. So this went on with Kanye, but in people's personal lives, if you may be dealing with a narcissist, then they have satellite people around them who feed into that person's narcissism, the main person's narcissism, and you're being victimized by the narcissists themselves and their agents.
Right.
And so even if no one wants to buy into the conspiratorial aspect of Hollywood and things that go on there, this still screams narcissist from the Kardashian family and a flying monkey in this woman. Yeah. So in either case, she is a handler. So if you I don't want to, that's fine. But let's play the psychological level. Right. She's still a satellite agent to make sure that Kanye stayed in some level of control for the Kardashian family. Right. Because who knows what kind of family secrets he could have leaked or whatever. So they had to keep tabs on him somehow. So this goes for Kanye or anybody in their own personal lives that if they do so happen to run across a narcissist, they're very cunning. So I wouldn't be surprised if you know one. But just be aware that they do have enablers around them, and because they have to, it's part of how they function. And so just be aware and mindful of people that are close to them coming and telling you things, and or trying to get you in line or trying to get you to mess up. And who knows? The narcissist will go to the ends of the earth in order to continue to get their narcissistic supply. So I don't put anything past people as crazy. You say soulless. I tend to agree with that, because if you see how they operated historically as a unit, as a family, there's nothing that they show nor display that says that they are actually not only looking out for their own personal interests as a unit, and they move as a clique. And so for any man and that's the part, like you said, like the Kanye part of why he decided to sign up for that in the first place was questionable to begin with. But Kanye aside, any of these basketball players or any of these other entertainers or rappers that willfully sign up to be a part of that, I mean, I get it. You know, you're going to be in the front line of papers, but at that point, see again, so I don't know what their motivations are for why they decide to deal with, because there's benefits of being with that family, but it's all Hollywood weirdo payoffs. So if you're already in the mindset where you're already, you know, out of there, and the only thing that is on your mind is fame, notoriety, clicks, views, streams, or whatever gets you off, then yeah, dealing with a Jenner will get you there. Dealing with a Kardashian will get you there. And so for Kanye to get in that bubble, as you said, from all of the ways that he's speaking now, he kind of always spoke that way. Well, when he was doing stuff musically, and when he was doing College Dropout and all the other good stuff, he was a breath of fresh air amongst goofy rap back in those days. And so for somebody to actually provide oxygen in a world where there was just nothing but methane floating around. All right. For him to actually go and marry within a methane family, it didn't make sense. So yeah, I don't know the cause of that. I can't speculate on that, but all I know is he's out of the methane factory and he's trying to give his version of oxygen nowadays. So so I still think that whatever he's doing, I agree with you. I agree with most of what he says, but I'm disagreeing with a lot of how he's going about executing this stuff. And so but when you're a person that's been you know, bottled up and you never had an opportunity to get those things out, and then now that everything's exploding, I think this is just a manifestation of him holding so many things in for so many years. So so her job was to make sure that she kept a cap on this, but it was already twisted enough. That cap's going to shoot off.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
he was already unhinged before that. But yeah, when you're in that environment, it's just gonna make you unhinged. Like I think I've called them on, I think I've said this on this channel before. I call them the mob. I call them a mob, the Kardashian. I call the Kardashians a form of a type of mob, a Hollywood mob.
I agree.
You know, like you like, you know, once you get out, they pull you right back in, and all of those tropes and things where they talking about the mob. I feel like they're the living embodiment of that. But it's in the modern day corporate Hollywood sense, in which if you don't play ball, if you want to exit out of this, you're going to have to deal with collateral damage. Your reputation could be sullied, all sorts of things that you'll have to pay the price for if you want to be able to successfully be removed from that environment with your sanity still intact. So, you know, that's why I've always kind of looked at him, you know, kind of with a grain of salt. Like, he's not all the way nuts or crazy per se, because a lot of people like to talk about how a lot of people like to say he's emotionally unstable or he's crazy or whatnot. But I don't think any of us know what it was like being in that. And so when I see people like Humphreys or James Harden, even French Montana, who say thanks but no thanks, you know, I got to give them credit, because you know, if you languish in it for too long, there's a price to be paid for that. And I don't know that that price is worth any of the rewards that you get in return, in my opinion. But yeah, all of that is true. You know, this to me is just Hollywood stuff. And yeah, the Julia Fox girl is just another. Yeah, she's a Kardashian handler. You know, she's like when you know, the gangsters send out enforcers to collect. She was a collector. She was a collector. You know, Kanye was the package that had to be collected, and she went out and she was a collector. And you know, women with cute enough faces and nice bodies and a vagina, those are perhaps the most effective collectors of all, one would argue, you know. So yeah, very strange situation. I don't know what the future holds for Kanye, obviously, but I just hope that he is finding himself more at peace now that he is no longer a part of this environment.
Agreed.
Yeah. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to go ahead and close out on this week's topics. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Big shouts out to Remnant Princess who tuned in. We certainly appreciate it. We actually had an active live commenter on this stream, man. So that was pretty cool. We are growing, man, slowly but surely. We are certainly looking forward to continuing to grow the community. As I always like to say, my name is JV Wins. Please subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Like this video. Wherever you see this video, comment on the video, share the video. We certainly appreciate you supporting logical content. You can catch Conscious Approach on Instagram at ConApproach, ConApproach. You can also find me on Instagram at JVWins, JVWINS. Look out for Conscious Approach on Spotify. Coming soon. Well, not just Spotify, but all streaming platforms. The audio uploads will start coming in soon, so be on the lookout for that. And until next time, man, continue to tune in, continue to grow with us. We do this every week. We will be back next week. If you're watching this video as it's on standalone video, man, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. We can't say that enough, man. If you're watching this video on the Meta page, you can follow the page there. You can share the video there. Please comment. We pay attention. I look at all the comments. I pay attention. I respond. So be a part of the community. We certainly appreciate it. We are growing this thing slowly but surely. We got a lot of exciting things coming down the pike. So until next time, continue to support our brand of logical content.
Yes, sir. And the name is Dogon SS. And you can find me on Instagram at Dogon_SS or on YouTube at Dogon SS and on DraftKings at Dogon_SS. All right. And as I say on every pod, guys, all right, don't be too high, don't be too low. Keep it calm, keep it chill, keep it player, keep it even kill, man. Life is, you'll find a lot of balance within living in neutrality. All right. And as JV Wynn said already, we appreciate the comments for the people that have been leaving comments. We appreciate the likes for those that have been liking it. All right. So go ahead and hit that thumbs up if you already didn't. All right. So until next time, guys, we'll catch you guys next week.
Yes, sir. Peace out. Keep it even. Keep it neutral. We'll see you next time. Peace.
Peace. Skirt, skirt.